Je voudrais d'abord passer la parole à la rectrice de la HESSO, Luciana Vaccaro, qui nous fait le plaisir de venir introduire cette soirée. Merci beaucoup.
Oui. Voilà, comme j'ai mon premier challenge de la soirée, gérer le micro et les feuilles en même temps. Alors, il me touche de faire les salutations officielles. Donc, je tiens à saluer le vice-recteur Yves Ray, la directrice de Cyberlearn, Anne-Dominique, mais je vous salue tous, chers collègues et aussi chers étudiants. Je suis très fière d'ouvrir cette cérémonie des 15 ans de la plateforme Cyberlearn. Cet anniversaire constitue une étape importante dans le développement de la HESSO. First of all, I would like to warmly welcome Martin Dougiamas, I hope I pronounce it correctly, founder of the open source Moodle LMS. Dear Mr. Dougiamas, thank you for making all the way from Australia to Switzerland. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us for this anniversary on our Moodle platform. Thank you so much for coming and look forward to listen to you for your fantastic presentation. I have now to switch to French, but I will tell a little bit more about your fantastic adventure that I learned started with your PhD. Donc, vous l'avez compris, M. Dougiamas est le papa de Moodle et son aventure a commencé avec son PhD. Et à vous, les étudiants, je vous dis, ça vaut quand même la peine de faire des études parce que ça peut aller très loin. Donc, comme je vous l'ai dit, ce projet a été développé durant le cadre de son doctorat et aujourd'hui, Moodle est traduit dans plus de 100 langues et compte plus de 120 millions d'utilisateurs à travers le monde. C'est en 2004 que la HESSO s'approprie de Moodle, donc il déploie sa propre plateforme et dans le centre e-learning qui voit sa naissance, qui est intitulé Cyberlearn. Moodle HESSO compte aujourd'hui plus de 27 000 utilisateurs, so more than 27,000 people at HESSO uses Moodle et le consulte tous les jours. Et on a plus de 9000 cours en ligne. We have more than 9000 courses online on Moodle. HESSO est très fière que Cyberlearn soit devenue la plus grande plateforme Moodle de Suisse. Et ce développement vertigineux montre combien notre Moodle est devenu un outil incontournable pour l'enseignement durant 15 dernières années. J'aimerais donc remercier au nom du rectorat Anne-Dominique Salama et son équipe, mais aussi les membres du comité Cyberlearn, sans oublier le centre de calcul de Fribourg qui héberge notre application, ainsi que toutes les équipes des différentes écoles qui ont été pionnières et qui ont permis la diffusion de Moodle à la HESSO. Vous avez été et resté le véritable artisan de cette success stories dans notre belle HES. Votre vision et votre engagement donc, ont doté la HESSO d'un outil très performant que nombre de hautes écoles nous envient. Cette plateforme constitue un lien et un fil rouge très important pour notre institution, donc j'aimerais qu'on les remercie ensemble. Alors, cet anniversaire est placé sous le signe Moodle et l'enseignement du futur. D'ailleurs, M. Dougiamas vient de me dire qu'il va nous parler un tout petit peu de Moodle, mais aussi What's Coming Next. Et il correspond donc à une des priorités de la stratégie pour 21-24, donc pour les 5 prochaines années à la HESSO. La révolution numérique et la transition écologique provoquent des changements sociétaux majeurs. Et ce n'est pas à vous, les étudiants, que je dois apprendre ça. Mais ceci implique aussi une très grande prise de responsabilité de notre part, de notre haute école, en termes d'enseignement, de recherche et d'innovation. Ces transformations fondamentales ont conduit le rectorat, et en particulier le dicaster enseignement, à s'interroger sur les questions des compétences que nous souhaitons développer avec et pour nos futurs diplômés. Ces changements entraînent une nécessité de faire évoluer continuellement les compétences pédagogiques, mais aussi l'interdisciplinarité des approches méthodologiques de l'apprentissage et de la pédagogie. Donc l'évolution de l'enseignement passe par des mécanismes de valorisation du rôle du corps enseignant et un développement professionnel continu. D'une part, il s'agit de promouvoir l'apprentissage actif dans nos hautes écoles et de placer la personne apprenante, donc l'étudiant traduit, au centre du dispositif. Les étudiantes et les étudiants et le personnel d'enseignants doivent ainsi devenir des co-créateurs des connaissances et du savoir. D'autre part, il s'agit également de créer des véritables communautés d'apprentissage et dans ce contexte, la plateforme et les activités de Cyberlearn vont dans la direction où nous souhaitons évoluer ces prochaines années. Dans cet esprit, le rectorat vient de nous nommer un nouveau centre de compétences numériques afin de soutenir la mise en œuvre et de mobiliser les expertises existantes dans nos écoles, de positionner la transformation numérique au niveau institutionnel. Et puis il me plaît de rappeler que ce centre est composé par des personnalités de la HSSO, des membres du corps enseignant, des membres du corps administratif, mais aussi d'étudiants, parce que c'est eux qui vont être le moteur de ce changement dans le futur. Donc, pour venir à ce centre, les missions incluent le pilotage de la mise en œuvre de la stratégie numérique de la HSSO, le développement d'une culture et des compétences numériques au sein de notre institution. Celui-ci va s'appuyer bien évidemment sur les compétences et le potentiel d'innovation de Cyberlearn, mais je n'oublie pas non plus DevPro. Donc notre plateforme de développement professionnel, et je salue ici Daniel Rueger qui le représente. L'ensemble de ces mesures vise à amener la communauté des enseignants à travailler de manière plus collective. Et voilà, ce que je vous livre aujourd'hui sont des réflexions menées par le dicaster enseignement, avec le conseil enseignement, mais également avec le comité directeur et les directions des hautes écoles. Elles nous paraissent toutefois fondamentales, ces réflexions, si nous voulons être en mesure d'offrir un enseignement plus agile, une véritable conduite pédagogique, ainsi qu'un renforcement de l'esprit d'équipe et d'accompagnement durant les études. Pour revenir à Cyberlearn, nous sommes convaincus que cette plateforme a largement pris racine dans notre institution et constitue l'un des soutiens à ces défis de la transformation radicale de la pédagogie. Donc, je ne peux que souhaiter longue vie à Cyberlearn. Merci beaucoup.
Merci Madame Vaccaro. Nous allons maintenant écouter le vice-recteur à l'enseignement, Monsieur Ivray.
Bonsoir à toutes et tous. À mon tour de vous souhaiter la plus cordiale des bienvenues à cette soirée de jubilé. Quand on fête un jubilé, je pense que c'est intéressant de faire un tout petit peu d'histoire, de se remémorer quelques moments clés dans le développement du jubilaire, en l'occurrence de Cyberlearn. Et pour ces quelques mots d'introduction, pour ces moments d'histoire, juste rappeler qu'à l'origine, il y a quand même eu 2 personnes qui ont osé innover. Ces 2 personnes, une est là ce soir, c'est Ando Salamin, et l'autre personne, c'était la personne qui a engagé Ando à l'époque à la Haute École valaisanne, c'était Marc-André Bercla. Et dans le cadre de cette initiative, et de cet engagement qu'avait fait Marc-André Bercla, il y avait une volonté déjà de penser à des évolutions dans la pédagogie et surtout du soutien technico-pédagogique pour l'ensemble de nos formations. On a eu une chance extraordinaire, c'est que début des années 2000, il y a eu des initiatives nationales de soutien à la création de structures comme CyberLearn. Et en 2004, la HSSO avait candidaté à un projet dans le cadre du 3e appel à projet du Swiss Virtual Campus. Et on a eu l'occasion d'être soutenu pendant quelques années. Là, je parle sous le contrôle de Ando, sauf erreur pendant 4 ans, d'être soutenu par la Confédération à raison de 50% soutien de la Confédération et 50% de in-kind HSSO. Et c'est grâce à ce soutien de la Confédération que CyberLearn a été une des 20 plateformes, un des 20 centres qui ont été créés en matière de e-learning et blended learning au niveau national. Cette opportunité, bien entendu, elle a été renouvelée et il fallait continuer à la soutenir dans une logique de pérennité. Et là, c'est vrai qu'on a eu également une chance extraordinaire, c'est que le comité directeur, la présidence du comité directeur, mais également le comité stratégique à l'époque, a permis le développement de ce centre. Et c'est dans ce contexte-là aussi que tout le développement, qu'on est passé de quelques centaines de cours à aujourd'hui plusieurs milliers de cours, qu'on est passé de quelques dizaines ou quelques centaines d'utilisateurs à aujourd'hui plus de 20 000 utilisateurs. Ce travail-là, c'est une histoire de tout le monde et d'un engagement de tout le monde et également un engagement institutionnel fort. Ici, je vous ai juste remis, parce que j'ai réussi à faire un petit peu d'histoire et d'archives, de récolte d'archives dans les projets initiaux de CyberLearn. Et là, je vous ai mis juste l'extrait de la mission qui avait été développée pour le centre e-learning dans le cadre du dépôt de ce projet Swiss Virtual Campus. Je vais juste vous les lire, mettre en place un concept de e-learning, soutenir des projets développés avec les écoles, offrir une formation technique et un encadrement aux professeurs, gérer une plateforme e-learning adéquate, faire le point sur des recherches en cours dans le domaine du e-learning et intégrer les écoles disposant d'expériences avancées. Si on regarde notamment une partie de ce qui est proposé ici avec quelques indicateurs statistiques, mais quand on regarde aussi le travail qui est fait au quotidien, on n'était pas totalement faux il y a 15 ans en arrière, hein, voire même très juste. Hop. 15 ans de succès, 15 ans où on a bien entendu développé une plateforme Moodle, mais 15 ans d'attention particulière, de proximité avec les écoles et avec les professeurs. 15 ans où on a développé une série de webinars, où on a développé toute une série de soutiens, Moodle Café, cours privés, cours d'Air Pro, pour aider et soutenir la communauté des enseignants et la communauté du personnel d'enseignement et de recherche. Mais CyberLearn, ce n'est pas que Moodle, ce n'est pas que l'encadrement de profs, c'est aussi toute une série d'initiatives complémentaires qui ont permis d'étoffer et d'avoir une appréhension du blended learning beaucoup plus large qu'une, entre guillemets, simple plateforme mise à disposition. Et c'est dans ce contexte-là que CyberLearn, que Ando avec son équipe et soutenu par le comité, ont développé toute une série d'initiatives, des projets e-création, une cinquantaine de projets e-création qui avaient permis à toute une communauté de professeurs de faire des pilotes en matière de blended learning. On a été la première HS en Suisse à développer des MOOC. Aujourd'hui, 7 MOOC qui ont été développés avec un succès remarquable pour une institution comme la nôtre. On a réussi, je pense, à développer une véritable communauté pédagogico-technologique ou technico-pédagogique. On a réussi à mettre en place des partenariats forts avec d'autres institutions. Là, je cite notamment le réseau Relief. C'est un partenariat fort qui permet de soutenir une école internationale d'automne avec l'Université du Québec à Trois-Rivières et l'Université Savoie-Mont-Blanc. On a développé un cycle de conférences, notamment cette soirée est inscrite dans ce cycle de conférences, et on a une présence internationale en matière de recherche avec plus d'une trentaine de publications sur ces 10-15 dernières années par l'équipe de CyberLearn. Donc pour tout ce travail, je tiens à remercier vraiment toute une série de personnes, en particulier le team de CyberLearn. Tous ces succès-là, s'il n'y avait pas ce team qui est fortement impliqué, eh ben, on n'en serait pas là. Donc un immense merci au team, un immense merci au comité. Et là, je pense, de manière très émue, je pense à certaines personnalités, notamment Antoine Delay. Un immense merci au personnel d'enseignement et de recherche, parce que sans le personnel, sans les professeurs, on n'aurait pas toute cette dynamique au niveau de CyberLearn. Un merci particulier à la HSO Valais-Wallis, qui héberge et qui soutient le centre, notamment par la mise à disposition de toute l'infrastructure et de tout le soutien administratif et logistique. Un merci particulier à la HEGVD et au centre de calcul de Fribourg, qui, dans leurs appuis de centres de calcul respectivement de soutien technologique, permettent aussi à la plateforme et au centre de se développer. Et bien entendu, un immense merci à Ando, notre responsable de CyberLearn qui conduit le centre depuis sa création, et toute son équipe. Là, je tiens aussi à remercier les personnes qui sont présentes depuis le début, en particulier Bernard Crétenant. Merci à tout le monde, et là, je profite aussi de vous demander d'applaudir toutes ces personnes. Mais demain, comme l'a mentionné notre rectrice, Luciana Vaccaro, il s'agit de poursuivre ce développement d'outils, ce développement de services pédagogico-technologiques pour soutenir cette mission d'enseignement, pour soutenir notre mission d'enseignement et en réponse à nos défis. Tous les défis ont été cités tout à l'heure par Luciana, je ne vais pas les reciter, mais des défis clairs d'individualisation, de flexibilisation de parcours d'études, des défis orientés sur les compétences et l'évolution de compétences dans nos programmes, et surtout des défis didactiques extrêmement forts, où la didactique est au centre du débat. Et ce travail-là, on ne peut pas le faire tout seul. Le centre CyberLearn est un centre qui est au service de tout ce développement technico-pédagogique, pour le bénéfice et au bénéfice de l'ensemble de nos diplômés, étudiants et diplômés qui se forment dans notre institution. Un élément qui est également fort et qui a été cité par notre rectrice, c'est que tous ces travaux qu'on va devoir mener ces prochaines années, ce sont des travaux où on va devoir encore plus mettre nos étudiants au cœur du dispositif, nos étudiants dans une logique d'équipe apprenante et rôle d'apprenant. Et donc, on va devoir travailler en lien enseignement et innovation pédagogique sur des rôles renforcés de l'ensemble de nos équipes enseignantes. Donc, pour ces défis, je dis merci pour ces 15 dernières années et je nous dis en route pour de très belles aventures, de magnifiques aventures, et je suis persuadé qu'on aura l'occasion de se retrouver dans 5 ans, dans 10 ans, dans 15 ans, pour fêter de nouveaux succès. Belle soirée à tout le monde, et encore merci à CyberLearn.
Alors, merci Yves pour ta présentation. Je terminerai aussi en disant un petit mot. On a compris ce soir, et peut-être que Martin a aussi compris, que ce n'est pas seulement Moodle notre activité, mais c'est quand même la base de notre activité, c'est la sève de notre arbre, si on peut dire ça comme ça. Et je voudrais juste revenir sur quelques éléments liés à Moodle et à notre activité là autour. Donc Moodle en 5 dates, quelques dates. Alors 1999, ça remonte à avant Moodle. En 1999, une plateforme d'apprentissage, c'était ça. C'est WebCity. C'était une plateforme d'apprentissage assez complexe pour un professeur. J'avais fait partie d'une équipe qui travaillait sur WebCity. Je pense que vous étiez administrateur de WebCity. Et pour la petite histoire, j'avais travaillé sur mettre en place un quiz. Il y avait moi et il y avait un informaticien et on a mis 3 quarts d'heure, 45 minutes, 45 minutes, pour réaliser une question de quiz. Peut-être la fois suivante, ça aurait été plus vite, mais c'était pour dire que c'était une plateforme, certes, qui avait ses mérites, mais c'était une plateforme assez compliquée à utiliser et qu'on aurait eu un peu de peine à proposer aux professeurs, puisqu'évidemment, l'intérêt pour le professeur, c'est pas passer des heures à apprendre à utiliser une plateforme. L'intérêt du professeur, c'est nourrir la plateforme avec son contenu et son métier. En 2002, eh bien, Martin Dougamas, quelque part en Australie, a décidé de lancer une plateforme qui dérivait, comme l'a dit Luciana, qui dérivait de son travail de doctorat. Je n'en savais rien, bizarrement. Je n'en savais rien. Hein? Yeah. Do you like it? Because I drew it, really by myself. En 2003, j'étais en Finlande, près de Noël, à Tampere. Et à Tampere, à 14h en Finlande, il fait comme ça, c'est-à-dire déjà nuit. Donc j'étais bien intéressée par mon projet. C'était un projet européen sur la qualité dans le e-learning, mais j'étais assez déprimée de regarder cet hiver tout sombre à l'extérieur, etc. Et quand tout à coup, quelqu'un a dit il faut qu'on utilise une plateforme pour pouvoir produire des questions qui seront diffusées dans 5 pays pour évaluer la qualité dans le e-learning. Et c'est la première fois que j'ai testé Moodle et que je me suis dit c'est quand même beaucoup mieux. Pardon pour WebCity, mais WebCity n'existe plus tout à fait maintenant, donc je peux les critiquer sans trop de problèmes. Et je me suis dit waouh! En 3 minutes, j'ai fait non seulement une question de quiz, mais j'ai fait toutes les questions de quiz et sans avoir besoin d'un technicien à mes côtés, ni rien de ce genre. La HESSO, comme on l'a essayé de l'expliquer à nos invités, la HESSO, c'est 7 cantons, c'est 28 sites à travers la HESSO. Et à la création du centre en 2004, notre idée, c'était, avec évidemment le rectorat de l'époque, notre idée, c'était essayer de faire en sorte que toutes ces facultés disséminées à travers la HESSO aient une sorte de colle qui puisse les maintenir ensemble. Et on avait comme idée que Moodle serait notre colle, et puis aussi de mutualiser les ressources. En 2005, il y avait plusieurs plateformes e-learning à travers la HESSO. Personnellement, j'ai travaillé, il y a ici Laurent Cibot, qui est mon responsable et qui certainement a entendu parler de cette plateforme. J'ai travaillé avec Icar à l'époque sur une plateforme qui s'appelait Encolap, un nom particulièrement peu sexy, et qui a changé de nom par la suite pour devenir eLearn. Dans la HESSO, il y avait une autre plateforme qui existe toujours et qui est plutôt à destination des entreprises, qui s'appelle eTeach. Et nous, notre problème, c'était que c'est difficile d'arriver dans une institution répartie sur tous ces lieux avec une plateforme interne, une seule, choisie au détriment des autres. Donc, on avait mis sur pied dans notre comité un certain nombre de critères de décision. Une plateforme qui soit gratuite, une plateforme qui soit open source. C'était pas la mode, l'open source à l'époque. Et on a dû pas mal lutter pour faire passer cette idée. On a gagné surtout parce que c'était free of charge. C'est surtout ça qui a fait gagner ça au début. On voulait une plateforme neutre, c'est-à-dire externe, qui avait rien à voir avec des gens de la HESSO. Une plateforme simple à utiliser avec des ressources pédagogiques riches, qu'on pouvait utiliser plusieurs ou seulement une ou deux, comme on voulait. Et ce qui ressortait de ces critères, eh bien, c'était Moodle. Moodle 1.5 pour être précis, qu'on a déployé à ce moment-là, et en 2 ans, on a passé de 16 cours en ligne à 850. Donc c'est quand même une progression assez forte. C'est pas seulement parce que Moodle était génial, c'est aussi parce que la HESSO a grandi en intégrant d'autres écoles, mais néanmoins, c'est toujours une petite statistique qui est sympathique à mettre en avant. 2011, eh bien, on a beaucoup d'autres plateformes qui arrivent sur le marché. On connaît Blackboard, on connaît toutes sortes de plateformes. Et puis, il y a chaque fois dans la HESSO des gens qui disent oh, mais pourquoi Moodle? Il y a sûrement quelque chose de mieux. Donc, nous, on a à chaque fois travaillé à comparer des plateformes. Donc, si on utilise toujours Moodle, c'est parce que Moodle a passé le test. We tested Moodle every 2 years. And, OK. We stick to it. Donc, on continue à l'utiliser pour les critères qui sont indiqués ici. Un critère qu'on a rajouté qui n'était pas possible au départ et qui est un critère qui est important pour nous et pour tous, mais aussi pour nous et pour notre équipe, c'est le critère de communauté. La communauté autour de Moodle, que ce soit les développeurs ou les utilisateurs, les profs, etc., elle est très très forte et pour l'instant, il n'y a aucune plateforme. Je ne vais pas faire de la publicité. I'm not advertising. Mais no, not really. On voulait vraiment regarder que ce soit possible. Et il y a des plateformes open source qui existent. Il y a des plateformes open source même en Suisse qui sont assez intéressantes, mais qui n'ont pas de communauté suffisante. Donc en 2011, on a passé à Moodle 1.9 et on a commencé à faire beaucoup d'efforts pour former les professeurs. On a par exemple créer des Moodle Cafés qui sont des petits événements qu'on va faire dans toutes ces écoles où on offre les cafés, les croissants et les jus d'orange aux profs. Si vous n'avez jamais participé à un Moodle Café, retenez ça. Vous pouvez le faire organiser dans votre école si vous organisez ce genre d'event ou participer là où vous voulez. Et je vous assure que les cafés sont meilleurs que mon dessin de tasse à café. My mug sketch is not so beautiful, but coffee is better than this. 2014, c'était il y a 5 ans, on a fêté les 10 ans de Cyberlearn, et là, on avait à peu près 5000 cours en ligne et puis 17 000 utilisateurs. On a passé à Moodle 2.4, on a fait un gros saut entre 1.9 et 2.2 à un moment donné, qui a été assez complexe à faire. Maintenant, on est plus sage, maintenant on migre chaque année, en même temps que Moodle sort sa nouvelle version. 2019, ben c'est maintenant. Maintenant, on est la première instance Moodle de Suisse, qui est un petit peu normal parce qu'on est quand même la 2e plus grande haute école de Suisse, donc ça va un petit peu avec aussi. Les chiffres ont été annoncés, grosso modo 9000 cours en ligne et 27 000 utilisateurs. On est à Moodle 3.7, l'été prochain on passera à la toute dernière version. Et ce que j'ai mis en bleu clair ici, ça ressort pas tellement, ça ressort mieux à mon écran, mais ce que j'ai mis en bleu clair ici, c'est qu'on a dépassé simplement le fait d'utiliser Moodle. Maintenant on contribue aussi à Moodle en développant un certain nombre de plugins. Alors, par exemple, si on prend le plugin e-voting qui permet aux étudiants de voter sur des questions de quiz en classe, c'est quelque chose qui est classique, qui est utilisé un peu partout. Mes étudiants qui sont là l'ont utilisé dans ma classe. Mais ce que nous, on a fait, c'est que c'est une activité de Moodle. Pas encore cœur, maybe once. Et donc, ça permet ce qui est intéressant, c'est que ça permet au professeur de créer son cours en y ajoutant toutes sortes de ressources, dont cette ressource-là, sans devoir sortir de l'écosystème Moodle, et même chose pour les étudiants, sans devoir sortir de cet élément-là. On a aussi, puisqu'on a parlé MOOCs, on a aussi décidé de travailler avec une plateforme spécifique pour les MOOCs. Cette plateforme est un dérivé de Moodle qu'on a après un petit peu coupé, designer, etc., pour pouvoir supporter, disons, les MOOCs véritablement. Et puis d'autres plugins qu'on installe régulièrement et qu'on met dans la communauté, qui sont évalués par la communauté et qui ensuite reviennent vers nous, on les déploie. Enfin bref, c'est un aller-retour entre la communauté et nous, comme partout dans le monde. On n'est pas spéciaux, hein, tout le monde fait ça, partout. Mais ce qui est intéressant de voir, c'est qu'on a justement, ce que j'ai dit avant et que je vais bien remettre en avant, c'est qu'on a passé de l'étape, on utilise Moodle, simplement on contribue aussi à notre petit niveau, on contribue au développement de l'offre, si on veut, de Moodle. Voilà, alors pour nos 15 ans, eh bien, enfin, moi, pour dire précisément c'est moi, j'avais envie de nous faire un petit cadeau. a treat. Et ça a marché. J'ai proposé à Martin de venir nous voir dans ce petit événement. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir et puis une grande fierté de pouvoir rencontrer Martin et de pouvoir lui proposer de nous montrer comment il voit le futur de l'éducation. Donc, un chaleureux accueil, s'il vous plaît, pour Monsieur Martin Dougiamas.
I've never been a birthday present before. I feel like I should have jumped out of a big cake. Merci, Anne Dominique. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. Real huge pleasure to come. Who here is from HESSO? All of you, almost? Who is not? Who is not? Who is from elsewhere? Some of you. Okay, cool. And how many people are students here? Students? All sitting together, but not at the back of the class, which is good to see. Who is a teacher here? Who teaches? HES. Okay. All right, I got the hang of the room a little bit. Very much a pleasure to be here. I want you first, before we start, just to reflect on this. Imagine this was a science fiction story, and there was a very happy planet. And on this planet, the governments were in peace, education was free, there was a species that lived on this planet that were in harmony with the environment, and everything was pretty cool. And then, of course, if it was a Hollywood movie, there would be an alien invasion or something, but, you know. This picture is something I would like to see. So I come from this side of the planet. I'm going to introduce you to an Australian word here. Whoop whoop means very far away. So for you, that is very far away. And I come from the centre of Australia. I grew up there in the desert. And where I did school, so there's me on my, we had a shortwave radio, and my class is these are my other students in my class, and it's about the size of Spain, and that's my classroom. And here is red sand. I had kangaroos for pets. I lived in an Aboriginal community. There was almost no other European people there. My father is Greek, my mother is German, and they met out there. And that was my life until I was 12. And then I moved to Perth. Perth is on the west coast. It's a small city of about nearly 2 million people. It's the most isolated city in the world. There's no other cities near it, really, a long way. And I still live there mostly with my wife, Usha, who is here. And that's where Moodle comes from. In Perth, I did engineering, I did computer science, and I worked at a university there. I got into helping all of the academics with their work about 20 years ago. And that's when I started to produce Moodle. And so I got into education. I did a master's and then a PhD in education. And I was all the time working on the Moodle in between. So the mission of Moodle from the very beginning was about empowering educators. It's very focused on the educators. You might say, why not focus on the students as well? Well, it's the educator's job to focus on students. We're just helping them. We don't want to be going straight to students as much. And we have very strong values in the Moodle community. And I want to stress this because with many projects that maybe, if you go to Facebook, you might find their values somewhere, but it's going to be 15 levels deep somewhere in some corporate website buried, right? For us, this is up front. So, education as a value, right? Every time you are talking with somebody, it's an opportunity for education. Openness. We are open source. But we are more than just technically open source. We operate openly. We have very, very open processes. We're very transparent in our project. Integrity, something there needs to be more of in the world. People doing what they say they're going to do. People saying what they're doing. And people doing what they say. Respect. A very, very commonly used word, but respect for me, it means all the world, all of the cultures, all of the languages, all different people, and respecting all of that. That informs what we do. And lastly, innovation. So we try and build a platform. We try and build things for other people to build on top of. You're always allowing innovation. Because one small group cannot do everything. And so what we're doing is building a platform for Moodle. Moodle's a platform. And it's a platform for learning. And we try and make it the most effective. Effective is my engineering background, right? What is the most efficient? How can we put the least energy to get the most results? And so that is the background of Moodle. Now these days, I travel a lot. I am visiting a lot of Moodle users around the world. So this is some markers on my personal map, and you can see places where I've been in the last some years. Last year I went around the world 12 times. And a lot of these are Moodle conferences. These are the Moodle conferences that we have. But more in the last year, I've been doing a lot of other stuff. You know, how does what we do interact with everything else in technology and education? So I'm going to a lot of other conferences. I'm going to a lot of meetings. I get invited. There was here in Singapore, there was a meeting of all of the education ministers for this region. And they invited me to come and speak, right? Or I've been a lot in China lately. And China is a very interesting country right now. It's really growing very fast. Their technology there is superseding technology in the West. And there's very, very interesting trends there. I was in Sri Lanka recently. I was all over the place. So, this was a Moodle conference we had last week. And I see Lucas Bosch. Where are you, Lucas? He's somewhere there at the back. There he is. You're probably in this picture somewhere. Oh, yeah. There he is. I'm not sure where I am. Somewhere down here. Anyway, so there. So this was the first time we had a global Moodle Moot. And every year from now on, in Barcelona, which is the center of the world, we will be having a global Moodle Moot. And I know some of others of you were there as well. Very good. This was very exciting for me because all of the people that I know from all of these places, a lot of them were in the same room and meeting each other. And a lot of them knew each other from working together in the Moodle project online, but they hadn't met face to face. And to see them talking to each other was so exciting for me. It was the best. We also had a pretty good party. We have good Moodle parties in the Moodle community. That's just the people who are left at the end. By the way, Lucas won Best Costume. It was a 70s party. So, we do a lot of things in Moodle. We have a lot of projects. I only want to talk about these three because I have a lot of things I want to get to the future. But I want to very quickly go through what's going on here. So first of all, the Moodle LMS. And Dominique was talking about your use of the Moodle LMS. That's just one product, if you like, of what we do. So it's used very, very globally. That's why I'm traveling. And this graph tells the story of the best available statistics that we have, that overall, these are all the continents, And in the world, 60% of higher education uses Moodle in some way. You can see Europe, it's almost the global average, about 70%. But look at Africa, it's like 90%. And I was recently at eLearning Africa in Côte d'Ivoire. They're all using Moodle, right? So the eLearning Africa conference allowed us to have a Moodle Moot inside their conference. We had a full Moodle conference inside their bigger conference because they're all using Moodle anyway, so we may as well do that. And when and my impression of Africa is not, oh, this is a very poor area that must be helped. My impression of Africa is there are a lot of very clever people with very little who are very smart because they do a lot with what they have. And so some of these universities in Africa have been using Moodle for 15 years, as long as you have, and the way they're using it is very creative, they're very imaginative, they're doing really interesting things. But this is a huge responsibility that we have. I feel this responsibility every morning, even if it's a Sunday morning. I feel the responsibility and I'm working, as Usha will tell you. Now, there are a lot of contributors to the Moodle code. This is the names of all the people who have code in Moodle LMS. And there's the ones who've done more have bigger names. That's a lot of people. And they're from all over the world. But on top of the Moodle platform, we have innovation, one of the values, of the plugins database. And there are over 1,600 plugins, like apps, that people have written. So Moodle is not necessarily Moodle. Every single Moodle installation is going to be different, because this one will use these plugins and this one will use these plugins. And so Moodle's become a kind of operating system. Just like on your phone, you know, your phone is your phone because you install your apps, the ones you want, and that may be different to the next person. There is more code in these plugins than there is in Moodle core, in the main Moodle LMS. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is Moodle Net. This is a new project that we have, which is really exciting. This is a social network for educators, and later on, also students. But right now, it's about for students. So imagine some sort of a cross between LinkedIn, Wikipedia, and maybe Facebook, but it's specifically for education. And it's a place where educators can find each other, so they can work with other educators who are teaching the same subject at the same level in the same language, and work together on curating collections of the best resources. So what are the best things for teaching this subject in that language? So maybe it's a YouTube video over here, and a website over there, and a PDF, and here's a whole Moodle course, or all of the things. And while you're there working, you're improving your profile, you're building a reputation, you're getting known as someone who is expert in this area, and the normal social media stuff, but it's very education focused. So here are some screenshots of what it looks like on a web page. Here are some communities that have been joined. There are some like featured stuff, so there'll be like Educator of the Month, maybe. Here's a resource of the week, you know, different topics. And you have an instance timeline, you can navigate. This is all stuff we're working on. You have discussions in there with your communities, and you curate the resources. Now, one thing is very different about this system, because you might be thinking, oh, well, there are many social networks already, right? I can go to Facebook or LinkedIn, and I already have educator communities, etc. there. The difference is this is open source, and it is federated. There is no central server. So we are not going to build another Facebook, because the world does not need even one Facebook. We just don't need Facebook. what we need are more distributed things. So each one of these can be a server, a MoodleNet server, and they all connect to each other. There'll be one called the mothership, which is the index, search index, to make some of the user interface. It'll feel like one system, but this one could be run by this university, and this could be another university, and this could be the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Education, which does not want to be connected today for some reason. And I use that example because literally one of the first instances will be the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Education, and they don't want to be connected today. Maybe later they'll consider it, but right now they can be separate. So they can run their own social network and later on connect. Now this is a much harder way to build a system. Got any computer scientists here? Anybody in computer science? Students? None? Okay. Well, it's harder, right? Well, you can guess it's harder. It's much easier to build one thing than build a lot of things that all work together. It's going to be more complicated. But we feel it's the best way to go forward because that's how the world should operate. What is the most used messaging system in the world? Can I have some guesses? Give me some guesses. You use messaging? You do messaging with your family, friends, students? WhatsApp? No. Telegram? No. Someone else. Who's got? What's the most used messaging system? Anyone got one? Huh? What did you say? Messenger? Nope. Instagram? No. Now you're naming a lot of commercial messaging systems. The most used messaging system is one that you have probably used today. Mail. Someone said mail. Email. Everybody has an email account. Who owns the email system? Maybe you've not thought about it. Nobody. Nobody owns it. It's a community-owned thing. It works like this. This university makes a mail server. This company makes a mail server. This one makes a mail server. And they communicate using open protocols. And we have email. And I can send you an email anytime I want. And I'm pretty 100% sure you're going to get it. And if it doesn't get to you, it comes back and says, you know. So in the MoodleNet world, we have something similar, a new standard called ActivityPub. And like email runs on the SMTP standard protocol, this is ActivityPub, which is part of the W3C, World Wide Web Consortium. This is, anybody knows who started that? I'll give you a clue. He comes from very close to here. Yeah, Tim Berners-Lee. I went to CERN once and I had a tour, and it was one of the most fantastic experiences of my life because I got to see the room where the web started, which is super cool. There's a Next machine sitting there, and that's where it started. Anyway, Tim Berners-Lee is a complete legend, and the World Wide Web Consortium is ongoing, maintaining all the standards around the web. This is a new one, and there are not too many systems that are using this standard yet. But MoodleNet is. We're one of the first. There is another big one you might have heard of called Mastodon, which is kind of like Twitter, but it's completely decentralized. And that's all I was going to say about MoodleNet. So the third one I was going to tell you about is our Moodle education. When I started Moodle and I was building, you saw some screenshots of the early Moodle, how it used to look. In my mind, I was like, if I put all my thought into creating these pedagogical tools that allow collaborative learning, everyone's going to use them, it's going to be great. No. Most people put a PDF in the course with some lecture notes, which are probably the same notes that they had for 20 years, and they used to have them on the overhead projectors, you know, the clear plastic projectors. Then they maybe changed it into a PowerPoint, and now it's a PDF. And this is the extent of innovation in online learning. And I felt very sad. It was like no one's using my tool as it's supposed to be used. And it's very understandable because all of us are going to use things the way we know, right? And especially if you don't have motivation to improve or change, why should you change, right? It was good enough for me. I learnt this way. It was fine, right? Well, what we're doing is we've implemented a new curriculum for teaching educators how to teach online. And we haven't made this up. It's based on a framework from Europe, the European Commission, DigComp EDU. And they have 22 competencies. And we have grouped them into 4: designing, guiding, connecting, and reflecting. And these 6 at the top are the ones that we think are the most important. And the rest are also important. And you can see this is not about Moodle. This is about general skills, your general competencies for being a really good online teacher. If you complete the training and the courses and the certification, you get a lovely certificate. It's digitally signed with a QR code. It's manually signed by me. The QR code is so that even if you print it and make it part of your portfolio, somebody can use their phone and check, yes, this is a real certification. It's not a fake news. So that's something we're rolling out. It's just new and it's just coming out soon, and we're going to be making it available to everybody worldwide. Speaking of worldwide, back to the world. What is the future of this planet? I've told you about a bit of Moodle stuff that we're doing. You know, you go find, these guys and his open source project and doing this stuff. All so good. But I, like you, am worried about the future. What is the future? Pretty scary. It's quite scary right now. Don't know if you're using your phone and looking at stuff, but if you are, the world is shrinking. One guy with orange skin can do a tweet on one side of the planet and affect things on the other side of the planet straight away. Russians can influence elections. People are starting to smash into each other. There is more data around than ever before. You just turn on your device and you get endless amounts of data. What do I read? What do I focus on? There's artificial intelligence feeding more and more data at you. You start looking at YouTube videos, you get more YouTube videos, you get more Twitter, you get more Facebook, you get more articles. I saw something yesterday about on Amazon. They're selling Christmas decorations with pictures of Auschwitz. Did you hear that? Now, this is a terrible idea. But guess what? No human ever had the idea. Somewhere, there is a business that is collecting thousands of pictures off the internet and automatically creating products to sell on Amazon. And no one's actually made them yet because they're made when you buy one, then they make one. But as a result, you have this crazy world where terrible things are happening, right? It's sort of out of control. There's corporate influence over news and government. And, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that, but it's getting worse, I think. Literally, a lot of governments now seem to be so closely aligned with corporate interests that it's a bit blurring anymore. What is government? What is corporate? Look in the UK. Currently, we found out that the government there is negotiating with American pharmaceutical companies to destroy their health service, the NHS, to make sure that people make more money out of their public health system. These issues are getting really complex. We don't know what's real, we don't know what's fake, we don't know, right? It's getting hard to understand. And we have 8 to 10 billion people, and I say 10 because Hans Rosling, a researcher in Sweden, has calculated that we're going to top out at 10 billion, maybe 11 billion, because for lots of reasons. But anyway, it's quite interesting research if you haven't looked into it. Still, it's 10 billion people. How are we going to make sense of the world, right? Put all that confusion aside. This is the closest thing that we have right now to a global agenda. This is what we should be focusing on. Doesn't matter what field you're in, there's something for everyone. This is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Can I have some hands? For whom is this the first time you've seen this? First time? First time? First timers? Welcome, virgins. I want you to see this a lot in future. You should all be seeing this. And if you don't know about it, go and look up and research it. These are 17 areas that we should be focusing on. No poverty, zero hunger, good health, well-being, quality education. Now, I can say what I'm working on, and what most of you here at this university are working on is this one, number 4, quality education. This was produced after decades of work by a lot of countries around the world to produce these big issues. And they're critical. Number 13, climate action. All of them rely on education. You can't fix any of them without education. The things we are doing is key, it's core. It's the thing that will save the planet. So our future lies in the quality of our education. What is quality? What is quality education? This is an easy one. Who's got an answer? Anyone? Quality education, anyone? Yeah. Exactly. It's something I have to do on my report every year. Well, I get, when I talk to people at universities, I hear complaints like this, oh, the old ways were good enough for me, the overhead projectors. Teaching versus research. In many universities, you get like 90% of your time and effort is in research because you get points, you get promotions, you become the rector if you get good good research. But not if you're a good teacher. There's not enough resources, there's not time. People are not given time to do teaching. They're not given support. I'm not talking about this university, I'm talking generally. I'm sure this is the exception. When you come into something like Moodle or any teaching platform, you get a blank course page, right? It's like a wall. It's literally like this wall, right? Well, I can't climb this wall. It's blank. Even the definition of quality is very hazy. And there is a lot of pressure to train students for work. We are training students to get jobs, which is great. The economy needs jobs. We need people working. But if our whole focus is training people for jobs, we are making workers for the capitalist systems. We're making workers. Is that all life is about? It's not about working. Life is about being a citizen. Now, I don't need to tell Switzerland. I mean, you guys have a real different take on democracy here, which I think is super interesting, and I really love it. I think it's a good example. I know it has problems, but I'll get into that in a minute. As a result of all these pressures, we have low quality education often. We have transferring info, okay? Read the textbook, and I'll give you an assignment called dump and pump. Dumping, pumping it back. Done. I say lump also because usually they're big lumps. Here's a big textbook. Here's a big quiz. Finished. Like, it could be different. Sometimes we put the teacher at the center. The teacher is the expert. I know everything. You know nothing. And I'm teaching you. I'm transmitting information to you like a shortwave radio. Or we could put the student at the center. Now, I know you said we should put the students at the center, but there is a problem with that. There can be a problem with that. If you put the student at the center, it becomes a selfish thing. right? The student is here. From a student's point of view, I just want to use your university and get through it and get my job. They don't care about everyone else. This is my take on what high quality looks like. It's continuously engaging and inspiring. So not big assessments, little assessments. A teacher who is engaged with a student, they have a relationship. The teacher knows what their grade's going to be in the quiz, right? They know, oh, they're going to get 80% because they've just been doing 80% for the last few months. Instead of teachers and students, let's put we at the center. What does we mean? There is a lovely word from Africa, South Africa, Ubuntu. Ubuntu, you might know it as a name of a Linux distribution. Ubuntu is this feeling, you know, when you sit home, you're at home and you sit with your family and you eat dinner together, maybe some fondue. I didn't customize this for Switzerland. I should have put a fondue pot in there. But it's this feeling, a complete we, togetherness, okay? We're all going to finish dinner together and then go wash the dishes together. We're all talking, we're sharing together. We're like one person almost, it's we. Imagine if your class was somehow told or understood that the whole class, imagine this class here, if I said, we're not going to get to cocktails until we all graduate together. We're all going to graduate together. It's all or nothing. Now it's a different situation, right? You're all motivated to start helping each other, to actually collaborate, to actually learn and teach from each other. We should be always including civic values. You know, I'm a citizen of the country, of the world, of my profession. We should be collaborating towards our goals, like I said. We should be promoting critical thinking and activism. If I see a problem, if you in the class go, look, Martin, it's going to take us too long to finish what you want, and we never get to cocktails, and maybe there's a better way to do the process, I propose a new way of voting, let's do it, it'll be faster. And I go, great, good job, okay, let's do that. So like, there's been some activism into changing the teaching process from the class. Like if people are motivated. We need to build connections to the world. So the outside world needs to be connected in our classrooms. The experts from outside, and I think you do this a lot here in this university, but industry, government, you know, real projects. Why are the students not working on real projects? The same projects that you're going to be doing when you leave the university, right? But on a more protected, you're helped, but they're real. Like it's meaningful, like it's real stuff. And lastly, sustainable development goals, like everywhere. So for me, that's high quality education. That's a goal, something I think we can really think about. And as an employer, I'm continually interviewing people to join my company, and that's who I want working for me. I don't look at the transcript of academic subjects and go, oh yes, they did software programming 202 and they studied this. You know, I don't really care. If I understand that they're that sort of person who is a good team worker, who collaborates, who has civic values, who is engaged, like great, that's the person I want working for me, because they're going to learn everything. Because in my job, the job I'm giving them, there are so many unique aspects, you can't train for it. And every company you go to, they're going to be completely new methods and softwares and things you need to learn. You can't train for it, right? You need to be a person who can adapt and learn those things quickly yourself. So people say to me, you know, often, I don't know, say to me, but they're like, I'm involved in a lot of discussions, and I know universities are always saying, what is the future of universities? YouTube is coming. And I say this, Like universities should model a better world. So, you know, if you don't like the canton voting system in Switzerland, well, in this university you have 27,000 people. You could implement new forms of voting and democracy here. You could experiment. Maybe, and you could vote on real things. Sorry, your job is still safe, but you might want to include the student population, right, as a government would do to its people. And that's just one aspect. Like, let's think about how we use resources and how we use energy and literature and all the subjects. Like, what are the better ways of including that in society? We can practice those things on a model scale, and then when people come out of university, hopefully they'll make that stuff happen in the real world. And of course, that's not easy, right? It's very, very difficult. And I can see you going, yeah, good one, Martin. Yeah, I'll be glad when you're gone, I can get back to work. But it's very, very difficult. But let me show you an example. Do you want the world of education technology to be run by these guys? Do you? Because I don't. Because these guys are all profit-focused. You know Google, you know Microsoft. Anybody know Tencent? It's the biggest company in Asia. They are Chinese government has some major ownership, and they make an app called WeChat. Everybody uses WeChat. It is the default app that everyone uses. And in fact, on your phone, they don't have a lot of apps installed. There might be Android. They'll have 3 apps, because settings, maybe a web browser, and WeChat. And WeChat does everything. Banking, communication. If I want to send you 5 francs, I just go with WeChat, you get it. However, completely controlled and monitored. Facebook, Amazon, right? These are not people who are going to be producing quality education by themselves. But we can do it with open technology and communities. How do I know? I managed to get my software into 60% of the universities in the world. So I have a little experience, and I want to see more of that. So let's build technology foundations that we can all trust, because I don't trust Google or Microsoft or Tencent. I don't want us to build everything on top of their platforms, and then next year Google goes, you know, we're not really into education anymore, it's not making very much money for us, we're going into this, and they turn it off. Like, they do this every year. They're always turning off services because doesn't make sense financially. We cannot build what is a human right on that basis. So how do we get all of the best educators and students in every field working and learning together and building this stuff? There's a couple of good examples. Who knows EduRoam? Used EduRoam? I got an honorary doctorate from a university in Spain. As a result, I am a member of a university now, thank you very much, for life. They don't pay me anything. But because of my membership of that university, I have an EduRoam account. I arrived in this room, I looked at my phone, I'm on Wi-Fi. Just like that. And these are all the universities in the world connected to that system. Nobody really thinks, you don't think about it anymore, right? You probably don't think about EduRoam. You go, oh yeah, EduRoam. But look at that. I can use I travel the world. I walk into universities everywhere. I'm on Wi-Fi. It's brilliant. And it reduces administration, it reduces costs, it reduces so many things. It's a collaborative effort of all of the universities. This is another promising area. Did you hear last week that UNESCO passed a recommendation? This is one of their highest level recommendations. Again, all the members of UNESCO agreed, 100% agreed, there were no exceptions, to support open education resources. This is huge news. Guess who didn't vote? The US. The US is not a member. You know, guess where all the big publishers are? Funny that. Anyway, the rest of the world said, stuff you, we're going to do this anyway. And they did that. And so now they're encouraging development. That means a lot of funding is going to be put towards developing free, open education resources. Free textbooks, free videos, free apps, free everything. Creative Commons licensed. It's brilliant. So this is a good trend, right? So I want to introduce you to a concept that I've started for bringing all this stuff together, open edtech, open education technology. We had a meeting last week, 2 weeks ago now, nearly, week and a half. This was the launch of this idea, and we had people coming into Barcelona and start this idea. So the idea is, let's put our brains together and let's think, how can we build the open education infrastructure for the next 100 years? Now, I said 100 years because that opens people up to long-term thinking. Because we are so used to thinking about my next budget, my next election, my next thing, short-term thinking. But we're a species, okay? We've been here for, millions of years. We're going to be here for, I hope, a long time. So what are we building to educate our young and look after our species? Well, let's start with 100 years, okay? That's a nice target. So there is a website, openedtech.global. It will be changing soon because I'll be updating it with the results. But this is the group of people who got together last 2 weeks ago. Pretty happy looking bunch. This was towards the end after we'd been working very hard for 2 days. These are some of the organizations that were represented at this very first meeting, and I was happy with this because it was a brand new idea. I put out invitations, and not everybody can come to Barcelona for 2 days. But you might see some projects you know, Mahara, the portfolio management system, Open edX were there. They make a MOOC platform. There's a bunch of universities. There's one from China here. There's one from the US. This is in Romania. This one's in Japan. There's a few companies that do services. There's the Open Education Consortium, which represents 300 organizations in open education. It's a good start. And we worked hard. We had a lot of presentations to each other. We had a lot of working groups. And we came up with two things. We came up with a list of principles, and we came up with a list of action areas. The principles are here. I'll go through a couple of them. Education is a basic human right, and open edtech can best enable equitable access to quality education for everyone on Earth. We strongly support open standards and interoperability. Control of education technology should be collectively shared, so that we're not in the position of somebody just taking it away. We should be empowering educators and students to improve our world. It's an extension of the Moodle one that you might recognize. Education should drive technology, not the reverse. Right? So we should be building the things that will help us do education, not the other way around, etc. So these are the principles. I'm running out of time probably, so don't know. How much time have I got left? Any idea? An hour? Thank you. 4 minutes? That's good. I'm near the end. These are the focus areas that we came up with. Now, we had 2 days. There's going to be more, but I think we came up with some pretty good areas to work on here. And the thing is, now we have a structure to start bringing people in to actually work on these things. And I want to quickly explain them to you because I'm pretty excited about some of this stuff. So building a global education cloud, I'll talk about that. Connecting funding to open edtech, global recognition of all learning, interoperability standards, a global idea bank, and helping institutions learn and change. So let me unpack some of this for you. And I'll tell you some of the ideas that we can have here, just to open your thinking, and maybe you want to ask some questions about it, we can discuss. I'm happy for your input. Maybe you know some of this stuff already happening. This would be very, very good for me. So number one, building a global education cloud. Imagine, like EduRome, imagine there was a server distribution of Linux plus some other stuff, and every university could drop it onto a machine on your infrastructure here in a data center. And I actually think I really think the libraries should own this server, okay? The server sits there. The server reaches out, it connects to the network, and it forms a global cloud with all of the other universities who have installed this same software. This is like a giant virtual machine on which you can build everything else. So there's a problem with the UNESCO OER recommendation. Oh, people are producing textbooks, open textbooks. Where do you put them right now? Oh, you have to choose a website. You have to choose a company. You have to choose, and that is all subject to go. It could all disappear. But if we had a global education cloud, we build those storage systems on top of it, we can store it in there. And if half the universities change their mind and bring their servers out, doesn't matter, because all of the data is circulating in the cloud. We don't lose it. So it's a permanent storage system controlled by universities around the world. And everybody can use it to build their own apps in there. So that's the first thing. I think this idea is a big one. I want to work with the people who make EduRome, Giant. I know Switch. I was talking Switch in you have here in Switzerland. They've got some ideas for a research data network. Like, I think these kinds of players need to be involved in like thinking, how do we build this global education cloud, something completely global. So number two, connecting funding to open edtech. We have a problem in Moodle and many other open source projects, actually. There are big funding projects like Horizon 2020 and Erasmus Plus, how do you say it here? Plus, I think it's the French pronunciation. Plus. Millions of euros of public money are going into education research projects. And 3 or 6 or 10 universities will get together, propose a project, they'll get the funding, it comes into the universities, they use it to pay salaries, those academics are working on some project. After 3 years, hopefully, they have a deliverable, they've made something, everyone was paid, and then it's the next funding. Who's looking after the system they built? Nobody, because nobody built in maintenance. And there's no long-term sustainability of the software anymore. This is terrible. This is a waste of public money, this whole system. So what we should be doing is being connected to those big funders and making them direct all that money into open source projects. Not just Moodle, I don't care, it's everything. But like, it should go into things that everybody benefits from and that lasts and is sustained by a community. The third area we need to work on is global recognition of all learning. So here, at this institution, when you finish a degree, you probably get a piece of paper. What do you get? What do you get when you graduate? A bachelor degree, which is a record in a database somewhere, and probably a piece of paper. And, you know, that's great. It's very good. But if you take that to Australia, they will go, we don't know what this is. You know, we need you to do some more testing, and no. The international recognition of things is not perfect. It's rough. On top of that, if I say, hey, Anne Dominique, you're good at Moodle, right? I'm giving you recognition in front of the crowd that you're good at Moodle. Because a lot of people probably think I'm good at Moodle, it has some weight. It has a weight, it has a recognition. And if somebody who doesn't know Moodle says, oh, you're good at Moodle, what does that mean? Not little, it's worth little. So how do we recognize these skills amongst us? And it's kind of a computer science problem of, well, if a lot of people recognize me for something, then I can recognize someone else for the same thing. That is not a degree, but it's a recognition that is worth something. And if I'm hiring you, or if someone is hiring you, and Martin Duguiamas said you're good at Moodle, they'll probably go, oh, yeah, we're probably pretty good at this job, right? Because it's a badge. So how do we integrate all of these recognitions of skills? And I want to know, when I'm looking at a CV, I want to know, are they good at teamwork? Are they nice to talk with? Are they helpful? Do they like to work overtime if they have to, or do they not? I want to know these things. I want to know that stuff as well as the degrees. So how do we bring all that together? And there are lots of people working on systems. There's one called openrecognition.org, and there's badges and there's technologies. There's lots of things are happening, but it's not all being brought together into one big, this is what we're using now. And imagine if all of that data, and actually the reason why they don't work right now and they're not working properly is because, again, the problem is I have to put all my recognition data on somebody's server. And I don't trust that data is going to be there in 10 years, so why would I bother? But if we had the first thing, the global education cloud, I can trust. I put my data in there. It's controlled by this. I have connection to my data in that cloud, and I say, I want to show you that these are some of the things I got, and then I'll show you some different things and show you some different things. And it's all private and secure. I'm nearly finished. We need interoperability standards. Now, there are many organizations working on standards, like ISO, IEEE, IMS is one in the US, and there are others. They all suffer from problems. I have a friend who is the only person, his name's Christian Strack, he's the only person who's been a member of all of these standards organizations. And I said to him, Christian, if I was going to make a new standard now, where would I put it? Which one would you recommend? He said, none of them. Because they all suffer from political problems. A lot of them are not open. A lot of them are controlled by corporate interests, and there's all sorts of problems. So we identified that in open edtech, we need to address this and make another standards body, basically. We need some sort of open education technology standards. Now, they may be standards that already exist, and we just endorse them. We go, yep, this is a good one. So like IMS, LTI, good standard. Let's endorse that one, and this one, and this one. But there's so many bad standards too. This one is very cool. I really like this idea. And it came, I know about it because I met a professor in Africa. He's from Sweden. And Henrik Hansen is his name. And he's been working on this idea for 12 years. And he hasn't been able to make it reality yet. But it's such a good idea. So very, very quickly, imagine if there was a site sitting on the global cloud where you could put your ideas into. Good ideas. Hey, I've had a great idea for something, and somebody should research that, or somebody should develop that. But I haven't got time. I'm busy. I've got my job. I haven't got time for that. I put the idea in there. Imagine there's a whole community upvoting, downvoting, experimenting with these ideas, and the best ones are coming to the top. And then imagine if this system connects the idea with a research student. So maybe there's a student who's master's or PhD, and they're looking for a good idea. And that's very common. They don't always know what to work on. And we were in the context of Africa. There's a lot of students there who want to get these degrees, but they don't have the idea. So you connect the idea with the student, with a supervisor. and the supervisor is at another university. Maybe this university. So maybe if you're, who here supervises thesis students? Anyone? Yep. So perhaps you have a new student in Zimbabwe, and you have this idea. Now this so far sounds quite simple. The genius of the idea is that he has built a system called a thesis management system that almost virtually guarantees the success of the thesis. Right? He has a system that tracks all of the quality points that need to happen from the start to the end of the thesis so that it gets done. Finally, we identified as a project to help institutions learn and change. So this is more of it's a little bit marketing, it's a little bit assistance. Here is a kit. This is how you use these tools. This is how, all of the things, and you make it part of the daily operation. With those things that I've outlined, I think universities can model a better world. And we can do it without going through governments necessarily. That's like a huge policy problem. It's like we can introduce it like EduRoam, right? All right, so that's where we are right now. You're standing on this. My house is down there somewhere. And I hope we can make this a better world together, and thank you very, very much for listening.
Alors, merci beaucoup, Martin, pour cette présentation intéressante, inspirante et novatrice aussi, qui nous emmène loin du simple modèle pour penser un peu plus loin et un peu plus haut, si je peux dire. Nous allons maintenant donner la parole aux étudiants pour poser un certain nombre de questions à Martin Dougiamas, et après, selon le temps, vous les poserez pendant l'apéritif.
En fait, ma question portait tout d'abord sur le fait d'intégrer un réseau social justement dans Moodle, mais il a passablement parlé de ça. Mais j'avais une autre question en fait qui aurait pu être par rapport à intégrer dans Moodle un système qui permettrait aux étudiants de travailler vraiment ensemble, pour pas le citer, mais un peu à la manière de OneNote, où en fait tout le monde pourrait travailler dans une même classe ensemble et puis rendre la chose plus interactive et plus créatrice, mais ensemble. Donc voilà ma question en fait, est-ce qu'il y aurait l'intention justement de créer quelque chose qui permettrait aux étudiants de travailler ensemble sur des projets de manière instantanée?
Okay, so the question is, you planning to construct an app, I suppose, a module for to help students in the classroom to work together, a bit like a social media, but I suppose as a small scale?
There are a lot of ideas around that. We could use your help. In the global moot, we asked some students to spend a month or two planning the future of Moodle, and they gave us a presentation showing their visions of what Moodle could be, and it was amazing. Like, I think everyone in the audience went, wow, that's what we want. So that was very cool. So we really need to know what people need. I believe that it's a bit of a shame when you are in a room to have all of these supercomputers in the room. Like, how can we use these better? Like, this is an open problem. So there's things like Kahoot, have you seen? Where you can interact through the big screen, you can vote, and there's different games and things, but I think we can do more. I would like to see like a big dots and colors and an interface here where we can interact with each other using these devices. But I think, yeah, I'm interested in it, but I don't have the answer yet. I think we need it.
Ma question, c'était de savoir combien de temps il lui a fallu pour développer la plateforme Moodle.
How much time did it take you to develop the Moodle platform? Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know. It's still going. It's still going. Well, the first 3 years I was by myself, and that was 2 years of that was full-time. I was on a PhD scholarship, and I was developing Moodle like 18 hours a day, just writing code, writing, experimenting, and yeah.
Moi, ma question, c'était un peu plus basique au fait de savoir comment vous êtes venu l'idée de créer Moodle. Mis à part votre travail, comment vous avez trouvé...
No, the question is, where did you get the idea? Do you just hear me? Where did you get the idea of creating Moodle? Where does it stem from?
Well, I was an administrator of something called WebCT, so I knew how not to do it because I was maintaining the system for our academics. I was like IT support at my university, running the system, seeing the problems. It would break. I would have to fix the broken problems, and I wasn't even allowed to fix them because it wasn't open source. I could see the code, I could make changes illegally. And I was like, no, this is not good. And also there were so many problems, I thought I could write a better version than this. And so I did. And my university was not interested in it. So I said, okay. So I left.
Yeah. So my question is this why you have made an open source? Is this...
Well, I've been a user of open source since 10 years before that, like in the 80s even, in the 80s, actually even mid-80s, when I was quite young, 16 and so on, I was already using open source. Because the internet is built originally on open source. People don't realize how widespread it is. You know, Facebook and Amazon and Google and Microsoft, they rely on open source. Without open source, they wouldn't run. All of their servers are Linux. They're all running on open source routers and all kinds of stuff. So for me, it's the natural default state. The idea you can make a piece of software proprietary and sell copies of it is wrong. It's just simply wrong. It doesn't fit with the universe, how the universe works.
Comment vous avez fait pour inviter des universités à utiliser Moodle?
How did you get university to use your product?
Well, I had to build something people wanted. So I was working a lot with educators. What do you need? What do you want? In the beginning, I was teaching some courses at my university and using Moodle, and I would study the results every day, and then at night time, I would be changing the code, and then the next day they would have a new learning management system, and I would study them, and they were like my guinea pigs, my rats in my experiment. And I would give them surveys like 2 times a week, and they were heavily helping me, and so it was something that worked. So there was also quite a bit of search engine optimization in the beginning. Do you know what that is? Well, you know when you do a search on a search engine, and some things are at the top. Well, to get them at the top, you have to have a lot of references to the thing all around the internet. So I was going around a lot of sites, putting links back to Moodle everywhere. Just hacking the system.
Alors la conférence, elle était un peu plus destinée aux enseignants, mais nous, en tant qu'étudiants, comment est-ce qu'on peut faire pour améliorer ou bien la plateforme, ou bien aider la Moodle à grandir encore plus et puis à améliorer le futur, comme il a dit?
Okay, so your conference was based more on a professor approach, and he wants to know, as a student, how can students contribute to make Moodle better?
Yeah, I've recently taken over product development again. In the last year, I had someone else looking after the product strategy a bit. Didn't work, so I've said, I'll take care of this again. And a big focus this year is building systems for feedback. So we want to get your feedback. So you'll go to moodle.org and sign up for some of the forums, or at least the front page news. The front page news on moodle.org. You'll get email. Then you'll start hearing about, we're going to start having big feedback sessions and user testing. So we'll be asking you to give your feedback on new designs that are coming out and telling us what works, what doesn't work, what you want, what you think you need, and we'll do our best to make it happen. Yeah, in our roadmap.
Vous avez parlé du Global ID Bank. J'aurais une question. Est-ce que vous pensez que vous aurez besoin d'utiliser des smart contracts ou des monnaies virtuelles pour aboutir à ce projet?
The Global Idea Bank and to finance, is that the question?
Non, pour comment dire?
He's talking about the use of
like a smart contract.
Yes.
Between the person who had the idea.
Yes.
Yeah, I think these are very good solutions. Yeah, this is the kind of thing we need. We're going to have very soon on openedtech.global, there's a discussion area about this, and please join. Yeah, propose some ideas, I think. It's the beauty of it. Eventually, when it exists, we can use it to redesign the system as well. You know, how to improve the system. Yeah, good idea.
Une petite question. Si vous avez déjà réfléchi à cela, est-ce que vous avez une idée d'une monnaie virtuelle que vous pensez utiliser?
what virtual money are you planning to use if this may come true one day? Yes.
Yeah, I don't really have an answer to that. Yeah, no, I don't. I think this is someone else's problem, money, economic systems. We need to solve that. Internally in, say, MoodleNet, we are thinking of having a MoodleNet credit. And you would earn points for doing some activities, and you could spend those points on other activities. Yeah, that's an open question as well. I have some Bitcoin, and I bought them many years ago, and they went up a lot. And I think, but Bitcoin is not mature. I can't just give you some Bitcoin very easily right now. It's too hard.
J'aurais voulu savoir quel était votre modèle économique au tout début de Moodle.
at the beginning of Moodle, what was your economic model? Probably, how did you finance?
Yeah, none. So I had a scholarship from university. I mean, I left my job. I got the scholarship. It was 16,000 Australian dollars a year, which is about 10,000 francs a year. And I had a small baby and a wife, and it was tough. It was very tough. And what happened was that eventually people started to say, well, people are always saying, oh, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And I'm going, yes, I can help you. And eventually I started saying, well, I'll help you, but it will cost, because my time is worth something. The software is free, but time is always worth something. So I said, okay, I'll help you. And I started doing consulting. And then I started having clients. I started to look after Moodle sites for people. And very quickly, I had 70 customers. And they were Silicon Valley Bank, universities, there were schools, they were all around the world. And I was maintaining 70 customers. And I had no time to work on software anymore. And I was like, this is stupid. I need to fix this. And it was a very interesting decision point because I was like, I know this model works, the support model works. Do I want to have a big company and be the CEO of a big company that has lots of services? Or do I like doing the development? And I remember sitting with myself one evening and saying, I need to decide one or the other. And I decided to go for the second option. So what I did was, there were people in the community also wanting to do services, and I came up with an agreement with them, and I gave them my customers, and said, you look after the customers, and pay me 10%. 10% of the top of the gross revenue. And quickly I started having partners. So I had outsourced all the services, and I could focus again on development. Now I had money coming in, and I could start employing people. And to this day, this is still the main model of Moodle. We have 100 companies around the world that do services, and we take 10%.
Yeah, hello. Well, you spoke about EduRoam before, and with your global future vision about a cloud, a global educational cloud. Do you think it would be possible to link the two in the future?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to, after the Open EdTech, I need to reach out to EduRoam and tell them about this. Imagine as a student, if you could take one course from this university, maybe go to Barcelona for 1 year, do some courses at a university there, go to Australia, do some courses there. Wouldn't that be cool? And you could make your own degree because it was all consistent in some way. That would be super cool, I reckon. So I think a lot of people want to work on this vision, but we need to kind of help bring it together. And, it'll be an exciting future.
So, you created Moodle in 2002. Congratulations.
That was the release. I started in 99.
Oh, okay. So, you created it on 1999. So, at the beginning of internet, would you realize at this moment that internet would become the internet that we know today, that is used by almost every people on this planet, and that it would be that revolution as we know today?
By that stage, yes. So the internet was created in 1969, which is the same year I was created. So I'm exactly the same age I'm 50, I'm the same age as the internet. I was using the internet quite heavily in the 80s, but there was no web. There was no web pages. It was text only. It was text. You had to use terminals, and eventually Gopher, and then the web came. And you're right, around the beginning of the late 90s was when the web was coming out, thanks to Tim Berners-Lee. And I spent my whole life when I was living in the desert, I read a lot of science fiction. Like, that was all I read was science fiction. And in my mind, it was inevitable that one day we would all have these things in our pockets. We could video call anybody anytime. That, and where I think we'll be in maybe 5 years is that something that size will be your augmented reality glasses connected to your phone. So this does the processing, and this does the vision and the sensing. And we would all be wearing them, and I could just create something here, and our phones would all communicate to each other, and we can create virtual objects in reality. I think this is 5 years off. But I was thinking about it when I was a kid, and I've always been into technology. So, in 1996, I had a VR helmet called the VFX1. Look it up. It was one of the first consumer VR helmets in '96, and I was playing like Doom and Quake on it, and getting very sick.
J'aurais voulu savoir quelle étape était la plus difficile dans la création de Moodle.
Which step was the most difficult in the process of creating Moodle?
Well, I could say a lot of things, but I'll be honest. Sometime in about 2010, I think. No, what am I saying? 2006. I got a phone call from the CEO of Blackboard. Have you heard of Blackboard? So it's a very commercial learning management system. They had already bought WebCT. They had bought a lot of other products, and they were like a big... their name is unfortunate. They're like the Darth Vader of the learning management system market. And Michael Chasen called me, and he offered me $20 million cash to give him Moodle. And I said no. This wasn't the hard part, by the way. It was easy for me to say no, because he was looking to destroy it, because it was, frankly, was kicking his ass in the market. Right? All the Blackboard people were moving to Moodle at this stage, and he was worried. So I said no, and that was it. Except then I had a divorce, and my ex-wife, thought that Moodle was worth $20 million. And so she wanted $10 million. And I'm like, I do not have $10 million. So that was a 3-year discussion. And that was the time when Moodle 2.0 came out. And if anybody remembers Moodle 2.0, how it was very buggy, it had a lot of difficulty, performance problems, that's why.
J'aurais voulu savoir si Moodle était impliqué dans le développement durable et si oui, dans quelle mesure.
Is Moodle involved in sustainable development? I think you've already talked about that, but if you want to say a bit more.
Well, at the moment, mostly raising awareness, but over the next couple of years, you'll see us being very explicitly connecting to it. And I was in a meeting in Berlin 2 years ago with 15 NGOs, so non-government organizations like, the Food Administration Organization, European organizations, ONGs. And all of them had been developing courses about sustainable development in Moodle, but independently. And I was like, guys, come on, let's get it together. Let's do this together. We can save a lot of time. We can spread it more. So it's more at this point advocacy, but we will, with MoodleNet, be pushing it. With the Global Idea Bank, we'll be helping push it. And yeah. And of course, quality education is the main reason now.
Oui, vous m'excusez, j'exerce mes droits de primauté. No, Martin, I must say this was brilliant. I'm very proud. Because we are produced not only the same year, but in the same week. This must be a sign, I hope for me. Congrats. Yeah, so no, what you saw my eyes very inspired at a certain moment while you were talking, because you cited the SDG. And I must say, well, 10 days ago, I presented our strategy to our politics. I stand up because I'm talking also mainly to my colleagues. And when I presented our strategy, we said, okay, with this strategy, we want to contribute to SDGs. And, they look at me, so these are chefs de département, okay? They look at me and say, oh, Luciana, you dreamer. So, yeah, you with your small university in a corner of Switzerland, you want to contribute to SDG, come on. Because personally, I really believe that we are training, I always say in French, I tell in French for them, nous éduquons des jeunes pour qu'ils trouvent une place dans la société. I'm very aware that all of you students, you need to find a job one way, but this is, I think it's what we are doing in general in education is larger, is finding a place in the society for our students. But my question is coming more on the political side. So I'm really convinced that we have to fulfill this mission, but there is a debate in Switzerland about, this is a word that you all know, academization, okay? So somehow there is a political tendency to say that, come on, you are trying to higher education too many people, these kids one day will be unemployed, and why you give bachelor degrees to nurses, and so on top of that, I'm a physicist, and I'm strongly defending that our nurses and social workers, they need bachelor degrees. Why machines need degrees and not humans? So I was dreaming of you giving this talk not to us, but to our parliament members, But I wanted to know from your very large point of view, if this debate about higher education training, too much higher education training, and why don't we educate people more to do really, tables and chairs. Do you see this in the rest of the world? And how other people face? Because sometimes my arguments, I feel weak. I'm convinced, but I only have my convictions. But I would be interested what you hear in the rest of the world.
Well, it's a very good question, and I was talking with it's a couple of back points here. I was talking with a minister from Uganda, and he was 3 times minister in different portfolios, and he's probably the next prime minister. He said, he's talking about student-centered again. If you ask students what they want to do, Uganda will be 60% social media celebrities and musicians. And we can't run a country. We need people in all of the professions, everything. And how do you make them attractive? And we discussed this, and I had another meeting, and I know it sounds like I'm showing off, but I'm talking to these people. I had dinner once with a Minister of Education from Finland, and I said to her, how does Finland have this reputation for such a powerful education system? And she said, well, it took 40 years of change by 3 people who were not elected, who were in the department fighting to basically create the situation where educators are like doctors and lawyers and respected. Why can't we shoot for a situation where all professions are respected, where you can get a good wage doing waste management, which is a very important function, doing nursing, why are nurses paid less than doctors? Why are doctors paid too much? There's a lot of, this is an SDG of inequality. And it's the inequality is a problem. So we need to attack that problem. And I think that's something we need to say is explicitly is a problem and that we need to fix it. I think wouldn't it be ideal if all members of society were rich? Why not? Why not? We are quite rich, generally. In a country like this, super rich. This is very expensive for me coming to Switzerland. But it's in other parts of the world not so much. But wouldn't it be great if everybody could have those things and we could work on that? Now, I know that sounds super idealistic and maybe communistic and whatever, but literally it is the best way for societies to survive. The Romans, the Chinese dynasties, these civilizations from the past, they got very, very big and very, very strong, and then they collapsed. Why? Inequality. In the end, some people got too powerful, and a lot of people were not powerful, and there was some sort of a revolution or a collapse. And do we want our society to collapse? I don't think so. So it's in everybody's benefit that we reduce inequality. And I think that's how we tackle what should I study? How do we make subjects more appealing, So it's a big problem, I agree. I think everyone should go to university. It doesn't matter what degree you're doing, what area you end up in. Some sort of study and on lifelong learning.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, we have to recognize there is pressure through government on universities to produce workers. There is this pressure. In Australia, we feel it very strongly, and there's huge economic pressure to just shut up, stop producing citizens, we want workers. And it's like, no, we've got to push back.
So thank you very much for your presentation and for your tool. It's great. So just a question about new products coming out, like Office 365, for example. How is Moodle going to face the tools that are coming up on the market now?
So, good, I'm glad you asked that question. So Microsoft reached out, because Microsoft wants Moodle's market, right? So Microsoft come to us, oh, will you produce an integration with Office 365? And I'm like, no, well, yes and no, because yes, there are people using it and we want them to have a good experience between the two. But what Microsoft love to do is once they have you in their grip, if Moodle is telling everybody, yeah, Office 365, it's awesome, use that, then more people come in there, and once you're trapped in there, once all your data is in there, prices go up, no longer free for education, etc., etc. We have all the problems. So I'm very resistant. So I said, no, I'm not working on an integration with Teams. Microsoft Teams, it's basically what's for education. And they did it anyway, right? They paid some developers, they made an integration, and the integration is exactly as I feared, in which it's like Microsoft have wrapped its arms around Moodle and almost hidden Moodle. Moodle's hidden in their interface, and it's kind of crushing it. And it's like, at some point, they'll say, well, this experience isn't very good. Why don't you turn off the Moodle and just switch to our new product instead? And so what I like to say is, just because Google Docs and Office 365 are awesome, right, which they are, I mean, it's so nice to have collaborative documents, but it doesn't mean that we can't have the same thing open. We can. All they've done is shown that it's possible. So now we know it's possible, we can easily build those things. And there are projects building, working already. So Nextcloud is pretty much the open source Google Drive, Office 365. Collabora is a collaborative document editing. Etherpad, there's many projects. And this is what I'm saying with Open EdTech. Instead of being little projects here and there, how can we get it together and make it work seamlessly with all the other pieces so that it just is. And if we build this education cloud, if all of the universities contributed a couple of servers, we have a cloud bigger than Google or Microsoft. Like, we can do it. We can make that better world. We just need to get it together. So, you know, there's plenty of nice people at Google and Microsoft. I talk to those guys all the time. Just the problem is that there's lots of nice people, well-meaning, well-intentioned, but at the top is a board, and the board is focused on profit. And that's the whole problem. In the end, they will destroy products if it doesn't make money.
Qui souhaite poser une question? Pardon.
Yay!
Yeah,
I wanted to see more throwing.
After working 10 years at HESSO as a researcher, I founded a startup called Future Instruments, and we are building precisely that, a real-time classroom collaboration platform. And people are telling us the same. Yeah, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 360. So I really would like to see how we could collaborate, how we could show you what we do, because we are very small, but we're facing the same giants.
Yep, absolutely, let's talk. And then you can open source it.
Yeah, and that was actually my other question, because I really believe in open source and open education, but I did not find so far a model where I can make my software free.
I agree, and this is the problem. Everyone says that, and that's why I want open ed tech. You know, one of the things I said was this kind of advocacy role, right? It's this. Like, I think if we can, as a group, support companies with, hey, here are 10 business models with examples that work. Here is some support. We have networks. I have a partner network of hundreds of companies, right? Maybe you can sell it through those partners. Perhaps you need assistance with UX. And in the group, we have some very good UX people who can help, you know, just for free. We just say, hey, you want some help with some small projects, open source projects. They're made by developers who not very focused on the user experience, maybe, right? Or graphics. So we say, oh, we'll get you some graphics, help you, right? So like, I think we can support each other. Yeah, so the first thing is we have to want to do it, and then we can talk. Cool. What's the project called? Future Instruments.
Yeah, that's the name of the startup, but our platform is called Kinaps. And
like schnapps?
Kinaps, yeah.
Oh, Kinaps. Okay.
No, it's a contraction between kinetic, which means movement.
Kinaps.
And synapse.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, so it's information.
APSE,
it's
Kinaps.
Information flowing seamlessly between people.
Oh, I can see we will have a good conversation over cocktails. Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Martin, pour cette présentation inspirante et qui nous a permis de voir vers le futur. Je suis très contente du cadeau que nous nous sommes offerts. I'm very happy about the present I got. Thank you. Je voudrais remercier, pour conclure cette partie que je ne peux pas appeler non festive, mais un petit peu quand même, je voudrais d'abord remercier évidemment le soutien de toute la HESSO et de tout le rectorat aux activités de e-learning et aux activités globales de CyberLearn. Je voudrais remercier mes étudiants qui, après, sont des étudiants qui travaillent, hein, c'est-à-dire que c'est des emplois. Donc c'est des étudiants qui ont déjà une journée derrière eux et qui ont eu le courage et l'intérêt de venir ce soir pour échanger avec Martin et je les en remercie. Et je voudrais terminer encore pour remercier tout mon team, donc tous les gens qui travaillent à CyberLearn, y compris ceux qui ne travaillent plus à CyberLearn, dont je vois 2 exemples au fond et qui sont venus ce soir partager notre anniversaire. Sans ce team et sans tous ces gens qui sont en train de filmer, d'organiser, de faire des posters, de les mettre contre les murs, enfin toutes les choses qui sont faites ici, qui peut-être ne se remarquent pas vraiment par les professeurs qui utilisent nos services, eh bien j'aimerais beaucoup vraiment les remercier, d'autant plus qu'ils ont par malheur quelqu'un comme moi qui travaille avec eux et qui n'est pas avare d'avoir de nouvelles idées chaque 2 minutes et qui trouve que quand c'est dur, c'est bien parce que c'est plus intéressant et ce n'est pas toujours leur idée. Donc merci, j'aimerais qu'on applaudisse très fort le Team CyberLearn.